Greetings. My name is Casey Tonnelly of Beyond Thinking, and my collaborator, Samantha Mark, from the Conscious Altruism community, are putting together a video series that'll air every Tuesday from now through Election Day. This is in an effort to inform folks, help folks have information. This is not a place where we're going to tell you where to vote or who to vote for or get political. This is about people having the information that they need to feel empowered to vote. So we all know that elections are only about 6 weeks away. And there's a lot of tension and anxiety and nerves and sayings that are out there. And we wanted to share a little bit about why people vote, the importance of voting, and a little bit about voting history. So every Tuesday, we will be dropping a video to share some information, potentially on how to register to vote, or how to take care of yourself with the anxiety of the elections coming up. And we do hope to host 2 drop-in centers. One, if you need to come and talk and get some questions answered about registering to vote or filling out your ballot, or any questions you might have about voting in general. We're also going to host a drop-in on Election Day, just so that folks can come and be together and have a space where, regardless of who they're voting for, regardless of who they're hoping wins, that it's just a place to kind of be together, take some deep breaths, and go through the day together. So today's topic is a little bit of voting history and why it's important to vote. So first thing I want to say is that voting rights and access to voting is a part of American history. 1776, when the Declaration of Independence was signed, white landowning men were allowed to vote, and that was it. 100 years later, in 1870, Black men achieved the right to vote. And about 50 years after that, women had the right to vote in 1920. Now, because so much of voting is up to each state, states get to decide how people vote, what options they have, and any restrictions that are going to be put in place. And so in 1870, Jim Crow laws started to be put in place. They weren't actually named that just yet, but so there was a poll tax. So you had to pay to be able to vote. You needed to have ID. You needed to prove that you could read. All of these things that, even though under the law, Black men had the right to vote, many were still not able to. And those laws carried through until the 1960s. And so in 1924 is when Indigenous community members and tribal members had the right to vote. This is their land. We were on their land. And it was until 1924 that they had the right to vote. In 1943, because so many Chinese immigrants were signing up to go into World War II, they finally repealed the Chinese Exclusion Act. And in 1953, Chinese Americans were allowed to have the right to vote. And then in 1964, we're all very familiar with the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights movement that occurred during that time. But it was in 1965 that the Voting Rights Act passed. And this is also around the time the poll tax was removed, which is like wild. That's in like many people's lifetimes. And payment and things like that were removed so that more folks had the access to vote. In 1982, the Voting Rights Act was extended and signed on again, as well as in 1984, it was written into law that voting places and the ways to vote had to be accessible for people with disabilities. So voting rights has always been a part of American history up until our present day. In 2013, the Supreme Court, no longer thinking that the Voting Rights Act was necessary, cut out a number of regulations that ended up making it harder to vote because 23 states enacted laws that actually made it harder for some folks to vote. So please, 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 we are going to add links into the comments about how to find out information about what are the state regulations in your state and how you can vote, because there's multiple ways to vote, but not always in every state. You could have an absentee ballot. Some states do early voting in person. Some states do mail-in voting, and other states also have voting on election day in person, full stop. And so we're going to add some links in the chat here so that you can check to see what are the requirements to be able to vote in your state, so that you can be informed, prepared, and we can make sure that your vote counts. Because these rights are hard fought since the formation of this country, and not everybody has the opportunity to vote. Formerly incarcerated folks still don't have the right to vote. And representation matters. So recognize your voice counts, your vote counts. And so it is important that you harness that right to vote so that your voice can be heard. We'll also add some resources in the comments below, but I want to thank you for spending time learning about voting history, the right to vote, and the importance of voting. And we hope that however you vote and whomever you vote for, that you vote by Election Day on November 8th.